We lived in Japan for a number of years, for 3 years, which is a very interesting place to be. I wanted growing up to be, sort of follow my dad's footsteps in a way to be an Air Force pilot, although he was not a pilot. But that's what I wanted to be. I was not good enough to be a pilot because my eyes were not good. I went to West Point for a while, and then I changed over to Air Force ROTC. And after I came and enrolled in Air Force ROTC in a civilian institution, I decided I would become part of the missile launch program, where you're assigned, if you're when you command the silos, you and a partner have 10 Minuteman missiles under your control, and of course you wait for the president to give the instruction, and you simultaneously turn the key and unleashes these 10 Minuteman missiles like you have in your silo, and you kill, of course, millions of people. And I thought, do I want to do this? At the same time, I was in college, undergoing sort of a religious awakening, and I changed my major from biology to religious studies. I got a hold of Martin Luther King Jr.'s writings. I've always appreciated him, and I didn't read him so much for what he said about civil rights. I read him for what he said about nuclear weapons, and what he said about war. And at that time, I sort of became a pacifist. And I had gone to the first step of training in the nuclear missile program out of Vandenberg Air Force Base during the summer. And I've been down to the silos to see the missiles, and I talked with the people who were operating the missiles. And I said, I just don't feel that God is calling me to do this. I want to make peace, but I don't think I want to make peace this way. And so I had a year out sort of deciding what I do, and I decided to enroll in seminary. And I said, let me try it this way, see what happens. And so I left sort of the military background at that point. And I went over to Scotland to work for a while. I met George MacLeod, who is sort of called the churchman, the Scottish churchman of the 20th century. Whenever George MacLeod met you, the question he asked you first would be, are you for or against? And if you knew him, you knew what he meant. He meant, are you for nuclear weapons or against nuclear weapons? And I said, I'm against nuclear weapons. I'm a pacifist. At least I'm a nuclear pacifist. I said at that point. And I noticed things about my past. I very much had the military upbringing with my dad and the family, and the ROTC, the West Point experience. But I also remembered the time in Japan, where I noticed in society, which is very peaceful, they didn't carry weapons. The police had no weapons. And I recalled with this when I listened to one of the speakers at the conference, Reverend Appwood, who was from the Presbyterian Church. He spoke of his time in Japan, and he said when he went there, he brought his hunting rifle with him. But they took it from him when he entered the country. And they said, you'll get it back when 3 things happen. Number 1, you get us a letter from a doctor saying that you are both physically and mentally able to operate the firearm. Secondly, when you can produce a certificate or showing that you have attended a gun safety hunting course. And thirdly, when you get 2 other sort of letters of certification or endorsement about your owning 2 other licenses about your owning a weapon. So he did this, and he was kind of mad because he was one of these Americans, like many of us are, that what are you doing to me? Doing this to me? We're the good guys, And so he found out that even the Japanese were more aware of gun violence than we were. In the year that he left, 1975, he said there were something like 35,000 deaths in the United States through gun violence. In Tokyo that year, the largest city in the world in 1975, there was 1 death by gun violence. I mean, of course, the country versus the city, but really it still is quite staggering. And so this sort of reflection sort of reminded me that wow, it really is different than you initially think, and that if we just come from this country, from our sort of small area, with our sort of thoughts that we grew up with, then we don't see the issue completely, and I don't see the issue completely myself. The people who have the highest rate of gun ownership in our country are white evangelicals, if you break it down into sort of race, religious group. Second highest, white mainlines. So African Americans, Latinos, Catholics are lower on the list in terms of gun ownership. So there's something about guns and our religious heritage and our affiliation or affinity with guns that we have to look at in terms of our faith, our instruction, our religion. There's something definitely there. George McLeod, the other thing he said, and he taught me a good saying. He said, quite often you get people to say to you, you know, if you're in the church and you start talking about social issues, you know, why are you meddling? This is political. This is politics. You know, let the government sort this out. And George McLeod's comeback was, he says, I will confine myself to the gospel. But remember this, the gospel has no confines. And it doesn't. The gospel's not everything. It's not everything. And as they say, you know, if God is not Lord of all, then God is not Lord at all, they say. So everything is about faith. Guns, violence, money, sex, everything has a component of faith and is about faith. So let me show if I can. This morning it was working perfectly. Now it's giving these messages. If someone is an expert on this can help me, I hope it's at the place I said it. This is such an armor light. It sort of brings to light the interesting.
The youngest person in the room is the only one who can help him. That disqualifies the rest of us.
Mine wouldn't connect, Miss Elaine.
Somebody turn it off or just go by itself. Now, let's see if it comes up to the part. This conversation with Rob, who's one of the leaders. Okay. It's loading. Let's see if it goes to the part. If not, we'll have to talk and have to fast forward it. It's loading. I hope it picks up where we're starting.
Smart TVs.
Smart TVs are all on the phone.
What's that? Let's see what happens.
So for me, this has been a very difficult journey today. Last night was very painful. I was looking at myself, my colleagues, my friends, the people that are very
He's leading with this is Rob's trick here.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together as brothers in Christ, and we pray for your leading us in this fellowship and in this table. As we ask you may give all the glory in Jesus' name and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, you guys know, I've talked to each of you individually on a pretty tough subject. We've all done pro-life work in different ways for decades. We've all taken very strong pro-life stands. And it has troubled me that the number of pro-lifers that have, in my estimation, jumped on a bandwagon of, very pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment. Is that a pro-life ethic?
I think it absolutely is, Rob. People of conscience and people of faith have responsible gun ownership in order to protect innocent human life, more so than their own life. And we need to have people in our congregations armed. You may have somebody walk in that yesterday was a perfect parishioner, excellent, but they're in a fight with their wife, maybe they're on psychotropic drugs, and they're coming off it, and they're going crazy, and they have homicidal tendencies. They pull out their gun, and they're saying, I'm going to take out the entire church. He's going to only be able to get off about 1 or 2 rounds. It's not going to be a mass homicide. It's not going to be a slaughterhouse until he runs out of ammunition, because the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Hey, you're painting on one picture story, but the other picture more likely is an accurate picture.
Yes.
You don't know anything. It's not an accurate picture.
You're living in a delusional fantasy land that you created for yourself in the ivory towers of Washington, D.C. You don't live in
I would say, if you want to hurl that kind of accusation, I could easily say you're living in a delusional world of men in white hats and black hats, and the white hats know where to fire and how to fire, and they win every time they take out the bad guy. The way I perceive it, that's not the way it happens in a violent confrontation. When bullets are flying, drawing a bead and firing the silver bullets and ending the melee and everything comes back to peace and quiet does not comport with reality.
Don't own one, okay, Rob? You're afraid of firearms, don't own one. You're afraid of guns, leave them to other people.
You know one of the reasons that I'm afraid of? Because I don't trust myself. In the moment of crisis, when I will wash In adrenaline, I do not trust my judgment, and I'm amazed at how much you trust yours. I'm amazed by that.
I trained myself, Rob. You have to train yourself, just like you train
Well,
yourself.
why not have that
to
training
go
mandatory for
and buy a
everyone?
lot. And because I don't turn to government to solve all my problems. That's why. I'm not going to turn to the nanny state because I don't like something. I'm
So why you
saying,
said
we
we're
are the
Obama?
government. An armed society is a polite society.
Okay, so
You
you
and I are walking down the street
Okay, so-
and we bump into each other.
So you
and
would
you don't
say-
know if I'm armed, I don't know if you're armed. We say, excuse me, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. No, please forgive me.
Okay.
As a Christian, I don't treat people any differently if I think they have a firearm.
I'm not saying, but there's a lot of people, the criminals are not Christians. That's the problem.
And
Everybody lives in a perfect utopia. Christian world, we wouldn't need one.
So let's put that question on the table.
I don't think violent criminals should have them.
Should it be
But here's
allowed?
the point. You can't keep them together.
But that's not the question I'm asking. I asked you, should the government make it that a person cannot own a firearm unless they are reasonably trained in it?
No.
Wow. You have to be trained to operate machinery. Guns kill thousands of people. It's a killing
No, the guns do
instrument.
not kill thousands of people. It's people with a will to kill thousands of people.
Now, that's the most delusional pile of crap I've ever heard.
Delusional people. Delusional people.
Yes.
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 Lies do.
Well,
Show another part.
so come on the 28th, and that's when the movie goes.
Wow.
It really is provocative. We showed it to my students before, and they really were ripped by it.
Did they ever ride a conclusion? Yelling?
He says some interesting things here, and of course, this is a group of high-up officials in our churches. You know, we're talking about gun violence, talking about how it intersects their faith, or maybe how it doesn't intersect their faith, but they're all believing it does, and I'm sure it does. We have to understand that people come from at this angle very impassioned, very sincere, and we have to respect that. That's why you just can't. If you just laugh at another person and disrespect them, then it does nothing to advance the conversation. It really doesn't. But I do believe that it very much is a spiritual issue. It is a matter of faith, this issue of gun violence. And I know we say, and the big motto is guns save lives. And I'm just not really sure that's true at all. In fact, I know it's not true in great part. Let me finish the thought. We'll come get you in here. Okay. The NRA, one of the directors of the NRA said about themselves a while back, one of the former directors says, "You would better understand us if you understood us as a great religion of the world." That's what he said about the NRA. And it has, in a sense, I think guns, what I want to talk about in terms of faith is the whole concept, which actually, even though Jesus doesn't mention the word directly every time, this is what he's really talking about. And certainly what the Ten Commandments are talking about, the whole issue of idolatry. That sometimes, which is basically putting something in the place of God, relying on something else or someone else for our security, our safety, we might say even our identity, for the power we get in our life. And idols are that. They are sort of stand-ins for God, because maybe we can't trust God, we can't relinquish ourselves enough to trust God and some of these spiritual precepts that we have. And so we do create these idols. And sometimes we have them, of course, right alongside God. And God, I turn to you here, but not quite here, so let me go back to the idol over here. And so I think this whole issue of guns and gun violence has to do in part with some of the central aspects of our faith, which is about idolatry, trusting something else with our lives than God or the great spiritual traditions that we have. And I don't want to be naive and just say, like I did out of maybe I wasn't so naive when I came to college. Someone came to me and said, "You want to buy life insurance?" I said, "No, I'm just trusting God." In fact, 10 years later, I got life insurance when I had kids. I got married. But maybe I sold it. I don't know. But I don't want to just pretend like faith is just a magic pill. You just take that and life works out and you're going to be safe and everything's going to be fine forever and ever. Ultimately, yes. Finally, yes. But there are, as we know, when you choose faith, some difficult roads that we have to choose as well. So when we're talking about, I think, idolatry, we're talking about finding security, which are things that we all need and want. We're talking about finding a power to live our lives, which we all need and which we all want. We're talking about identity. I think quite often guns, particularly with males, I find, and maybe in the gang world too, has a lot to do with identity. That guns somehow, or the use of guns, gives them a sense of not just power, but also identity. This is who I am. Can we find our identity apart from gun ownership, or apart from any of that stuff? The titles of our jobs, the size of our house, our education, our reputation. Can we find our identity, source of who we are, from something besides that? But I think at the very heart of this sort of idolatry is a kind of fear. Fear to strive. As Will Willen wrote this great book, Fear of the Other, that talks about prevalent, persistent fear in our culture and in our churches today. So what are we afraid of? If we say that guns make us safe, what do we need all these guns anyway? And if we've, in the last 20 years, gun ownership has increased 71% of this country, should we be the safest place on earth? I mean, should we be? But actually, statistics bear out that you're 25 times more likely to die of a violent gun death in this country than you are of another wealthy country similar to ours. 25%, 25 times more. What are we afraid of? Well, we're afraid of people who are different than ourselves, look different than ourselves, different class, different religion, those Muslims, those wacky fundamentalists, whomever. We're afraid of the other, and Wilman points this out very powerfully in his book. But if you look again at the statistics, maybe whites are afraid of blacks, and at this conference, the black man said, "I should be more afraid of you than you of me." He said, that's true. I mean, certainly historically, that's true. You should be more afraid. But even with this, fear of the other, of different races fearing each other, 83% of gun violence death happens white on white, among whites. 94% is black on black. So it's from somebody that looks like you. The chance starts from somebody in your family, or one of your immediate associates, or in your neighborhood, maybe even your church, where this gun violence comes from. So listen to a few more of these sort of sobering things. I just don't want to list you a bunch of statistics. But less than 1% of the gun deaths in our country are from mass shootings, and yet we sort of focus on that, the mass shootings. And they're terrible, and we need to find a way to stop them. But only 1%, less than 1%. In 2015, more toddlers killed with guns, other people, than terrorists did in this country. More toddlers killed other people than terrorists did. About 2/3, around 66% of gun deaths in this country are suicide. Suicide drops by 40% if guns are not available. Why? Because guns are immediate. Guns put a sort of final, quick ending. But if you don't have guns, you sometimes are forced to take more time to think, to access other possible ways. And quite often by that time you've thought yourself out of it. But 40% of gun deaths from suicide could be prevented if guns were not available. Domestic violence. I think a few years ago the NRA called for, during Domestic Violence Week, women, if you feel in danger, get yourself a gun. You protect yourself. If there is a gun present in a home where there's just domestic violence takes place, 5 times more likely the woman is to die by gun than she die otherwise. 25% more likely. I said that. So those are the statistics, some very basic statistics about the real safety or safe-bringing features of owning a gun. Of course, guns for hunting, guns for other things like that. I don't know. I haven't really commented on fear of the government. I'm not sure what to do with that. But the government has not yet, at least, attacked us, taking our guns and possessed us. Maybe they have at some levels. But it goes back again to, I think, this is really a spiritual problem. Idolatry, number one. Number two, this whole notion, and Katie Day at the conference talked about this, the common good. You find this sort of in the metaphor of the body of Christ. You know, that we are together. And therefore, it shouldn't just be about in our society what I want and what's good for me, but there has to be some notion of what's good for everybody. And the body of Christ sort of shows this interrelatedness, that sort of metaphor, at least from Christian metaphors. There's also this sort of idea of American individualism, idea of freedom, that freedom is for me to do what I want, however I want, when I want. That's freedom, and we have the right to that. And American Christianity, I think, has brought that as well. But if you look closely at the meaning of freedom, at least in the Christian scriptures, freedom is always conditioned on other people's rights. Freedom is always at the service of justice. Freedom is always at the footstool of love. So freedom is not the ultimate. And there's a scene here where, in the movie, where someone asks, about the Second Amendment. He said, "Is the Constitution?" He asked this group, "Is the Constitution the final word on guns? Is the Second Amendment the final word?" And people are saying yes in this Christian group. And he said, "Isn't there another word we have? Isn't there another word?" And it just went over their head. But I think, of course, in our culture, we have taken up these idols because that's sort of the way that we've been sold. To make changes, of course, in this multi-billion-dollar industry, the gun industry, it takes great work, it takes time, it takes perseverance. We're talking about, as Paul talks about, not just entities, not just individuals, but we're talking about powers and principalities. A lot of work has to be done, a lot of praying, a lot of faith, a lot of development has to take place in order to tackle this whole issue. Again, I learned it's complex. You have to look at the different contexts. What happens in inner city may not happen in the rural areas, may not happen in suburban areas. You have to look at those variables. It's an economic issue. It's a political issue. It's an issue of poverty. It's an issue of education. Housing is an issue in this. You can approach it from a psychological, from a sociological, from a criminal justice viewpoint. It's very complicated, so you have to look at it in many different ways. But you also, I discovered, have to be specific. A group like ours, sometimes I think our group tries to do too much. We try to be everything, and sometimes you just have to take something small. Take a small step and rejoice when you can have some success. One of the groups present this, and you can Google them or find them on the website, is called Heeding God's Call. And I'll stop with this in terms of something practical they did. They're up in the sort of New Jersey area, and they're a very small group, an ecumenical group of Christians, of Jews, of Muslims, of non-religious people as well. And what they did, they had a two-pronged attack. The first thing they did is they found in their community the gun owners, because they found out that 90% of the gun crimes and murders took place from guns from 10% of the gun dealers in the town. And they found the one or two gun dealers in the town that would allow straw purchases, which means a straw purchaser is normally a woman, and that's her source of income. So the gun dealer goes into this gun store with a straw purchaser. It's always a he, it seems. Can't purchase because of his background, his record. He might have something that will prevent him. But she does not. And so she goes in with him, and they go and they look at the guns, and they pick them out. And often and usually the store owner knows about this, and even the police know about this. And she sort of takes the guns that he chooses, and she hands over cash to the guy, and she carries the guns out, and they go straight into the trunk of the gun dealer. And this is how so many of the guns, particularly he's talking about Philadelphia, how the guns got on the streets in Philadelphia. They said, the mayor said in 1 year recently, every single gun death in the city that year was attributed to a gun that was illegally obtained, like straw purchasing or maybe stolen. So what this group did is every Monday for an hour from 12 to 1, they had a huge group of people, sometimes 75, sometimes 100, in the summertime, maybe just a few because people were on vacation. But they would go protest in front of this gun dealership. And they took, at the beginning, sort of their 10 points of being a good gun dealer. And they asked the guy to sign this, to agree to these points. And he didn't. And so that's when they started protesting. And so they did this for several years. And finally what happened is he did not comply. The gun dealer did not comply, but the police, because it got so much public attention, it got in the newspapers, everybody knew about the shady dealings with the gun dealership, the police went and closed him down. And that was, his business was finished. The other thing that they do is they go to the sites of murders, of gun violence murders, and they have made these T-shirts with the person's name, their age, and their date of death on it. And they have a series of these T-shirts they put up on these sort of crosses, and they stick them in the ground. And people drive by, and most people, when they drive by, quite often they'll come by again later on. Some people stop and park their car and go read. And then there's a little place like one of these real estate boxes where you can pull out a leaflet on the organization and explain to them what they're doing. And they have gotten so much feedback by being, public about this. So these are only two things they do. They go and protest in front of these stores, these gun owners that sell this way, and then they also will put up these displays of these shirts. Those shirts we saw in the slide had like 250 shirts up that were very, very bright, very visible, very arresting as people drove by. And so that's one group, but they manage themselves to really get New Jersey to change the laws, the gun laws, that help to tighten things up. The problem with New Jersey is Pennsylvania, because they don't have gun laws that are quite as tight. And so most of them come to New Jersey for the crimes. And so that's why it's important. One of the things they did mention, I'll stop with this, the law that seems to be somewhat most pressing is the gun carry and conceal reciprocity law, which means that if you get a carry and conceal permit in one state, and it may be as easy as just applying for it online, or just filling out a piece of paper, no background check, no certification from a physician, nothing like that. You just fill it out, easier than getting a hunting license, actually, in some states. And that would be accepted in the states where they have stringent carry and conceal regulations. And so that's actually, people are very afraid because with the Congress and Donald Trump's at least spoken support of NRA and its agenda, and their support of him, they're afraid that this new Congress will pass this law, and therefore it'll be easy for these carry and conceal permits to be accepted from every state in stringent states. Anyway, let me stop there. I've spoken long enough, and I'm not sure you got what I was saying, but let me open up to some of your comments.